Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm Sarah Watt.
And I'm William Chen.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. However, as is tradition at Cinema in Context, we end our year with a bit of a wrap-up of our best films, our biggest surprises, our biggest disappointments, wildcards, TV, the lot. We're going to cover 2024 so we can get ready for 2025.
Oh my gosh, just around the corner.
Just around the corner. And it's worth saying that usually we talk spoilers, but we're going to try to keep spoilers to a minimum. We're really aware that a lot of listeners come into these episodes looking for suggestions, actually. I've had a lot of people say to me, you know, I love your end of years because it tells me what to watch over the summer. So
What to catch up on that you've missed that was actually great.
Yeah, and actually, it's also just me as well. Often I go and watch the films that both of you have talked about.
Yes, so do I. Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah, so looking forward to getting into it. Sarah, give us a bit of a summary of the 5 categories that we're going to be covering today.
We like to do things a little differently at Cinema in Context. And so for the last couple of years, actually one of my favourite categories is that we do Wildcard. And sorry if you wanted me to say these in order, Jeremy.
No,
I wasn't
go
paying
for it.
attention at all. But the Wildcard entry will be the film that really caught us by surprise, possibly one that we didn't even know was coming out. Obviously, we will have our biggest disappointment, which is usually a film that we have been anticipating and that really doesn't come up trumps, as opposed to just worst film of the year, which might just be worst film of the year. We love to do biggest surprise, which is, again, might be a film that you thought was going to be a bit average but turned out great, or it might be something that you didn't see coming but was very surprising in some sort of way. And our best films of the year, what we're going to do is we're going to do a second runner-up, a first runner-up, and a best film for each of us individually. Now, what we do like to do is a little bit of a tally so that we can see if there's any overlap, because quite often there's a little bit of an intersecting set between Sarah and William, or between William and Jeremy, and less often between Sarah and Jeremy. And then we're able to do a bit of a tally and say, sometimes in previous years we've said the Cinema in Context best film of the year is without doubt blah blah blah.
Zootopia, Mission Impossible, Fallout,
Parasite
was the biggest consensus.
We might be able to do that, but I bet you not this year. And we will, because ever since the pandemic we acknowledge that television has been becoming a bigger and bigger part of everyone's lives. We will be discussing the one TV show that we watched on TV this year that is of special mention.
Lovely. Well, let's start with best surprise. William, you kick us off. What's been your biggest surprise of 2024?
The biggest surprise of 2024. Well, Sarah, you very aptly said that surprise meant something that we went into it not expecting much and got a lot out of. And is there any studio on this earth that has such low expectations attached to it as Illumination?
Wow.
The house that made the Minions, or the house that the Minions made, depending on your view. Gosh, every single one of their movies has been just the bottom of the barrel, the pits of kiddie flicks. Oh, look, it's colourful. There's pratfalls. People go, banana, and we'll call it a day. Let's make $1 billion.
Oh, you're really selling this film.
Yeah.
So, Despicable Me 4 came out this year. It was god-awful. It was very, very bad. Probably the worst of the Despicable Me movies. However, at the start of the year, or at the end of last year, depending on how we want to look at release dates, Illumination released a film called Migration. This is a very, very strange thing. They basically said, well, what if we started looking at more creator-driven projects and got the director of... Have you guys ever seen Ernest and Celestine?
Yes.
Celestine.
It's one of the most beautiful films ever.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Right? And so the director of Ernest and Celestine, Benjamin René, and, I mean, you guys like him, you guys love him, Mike White.
Yeah.
The writer and director of, there's White Lotus, School of Rock, he also is in the School of Rock. They got together to make an animated film about a migrating family of ducks going south for the winter. And the poster's awful. The trailers are awful. I watched it on the whim, kind of, because there was nothing else on Netflix. And it's not bad at all, you guys. And for that, I give Illumination a win.
Wow.
Like, it is character driven. Yes, it is pretty much what you expect, but it's not built on gags. It doesn't rely on lazy stereotypes. It's like, okay, everything that is funny for a reason and not because of random non sequiturs, right?
Yeah.
This really blew me away, even though it's like, it's not a great film, but it's a good film. And for this studio, I mean, the last movies we saw, Super Mario, I mean, we reviewed on this podcast. It's fine. It's just a colourful distraction. And I think this elevates their films above a colourful distraction, which I found lovely.
Sounds like a massive divergence for them. Is that something that critically and I suppose commercially that people have acknowledged, that migration feels really anathema to what they do, but in a good way?
Well, critically, it's done better. Commercially, nah, you can't beat the Minions.
No, right.
I mean, they
but
were
people
at the
have at least
Olympics, for goodness
acknowledged,
sakes.
like, yeah, this is crazy. This is actually a good film.
So it shows you that these crazy Frenchmen, you know, at Illumination can actually make good stuff as long as there's good writing and they care about what they're making. So that's my surprise.
And
Migration.
Mike White. So I've just been rewatching The White Lotus. I'm currently in season 2. I re-listened to our episode about the season 1 White Lotus.
Yeah.
And you know, for all of its satire, for all of its political commentary and social commentary, Mike White's just really good at writing character, and the characters are so much fun. You can take away all of those extra layers, and it's just a great time. So I would love to see that. Also, seems to be a year of migrating duck animated films, right? With the wild robot.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's that thing of like some different studios seem to make similar versions of the same films.
Yeah, that is weird. Yeah.
Nice. Sarah, what's your biggest surprise of 2024?
Well, talk about a pivot. Ladies, gentlemen, everybody's. So, there's a film called Kneecap. Have you heard of Kneecap, and have you seen the film? Oh, wow.
Kneecap.
I love it when I can bring you guys things that you don't even know.
I have never heard of it. No.
Oh my God, you're going to be so into this. In a year when we are increasingly, particularly in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we are increasingly mindful and awake to the necessary privileging of indigenous languages. Kneecap is an extraordinary movie about, and it's semi-autobiographical, and it's about Ireland's first Irish language rap group. And it stars the 3 young men playing themselves or playing slightly heightened versions of themselves as they're growing up in Ireland, and they're growing up under Republican parents who are very pro the Irish language. So these lads grow up and they're writing lyrics in their notebooks and that, and they're getting in trouble at school, and they get in with an Irish language teacher from one of the schools. And this is where the film connects with me, because he's like the English teacher that I would be, where I'm getting my kids to write songs or lyrics or whatever, and I'll spot someone and go, oh, you've got a spark of talent. So this real life Irish teacher, who's as staid as anything, recognizes the talent of one of his students and invites the 2 lads to start recording their songs in a makeshift studio in his garage. And these 3, and they say, but we need you to be part of it as well. And he says, but I'm a teacher. So he wears a balaclava on stage so that people don't know who he is. And he's DJ so-and-so. And these 3 lads, who are now 3 young men in their 20s or 30s, have stormed the world stage IRL in real life as this extraordinary, as I say, punk rap band. So they rap in Irish with little bits of English, but not really. And the whole film is mainly in Irish, but also in English as well, when they're up against the constabulary and the establishment who are forcing them to not speak their own language. But then we get subtitles as well. And sometimes we get subtitles necessarily because it all sounds like Trainspotting-esque, kind of like, you know, that Glasgow... I always think, was Trainspotting Glasgow or Edinburgh? It was impenetrable anyway. But... So Kneecap is rather like that. Now, because I don't speak Irish, I cannot pronounce the names of these 3 people. I can say Saoirse Ronan, and that's about it. She's not in it, but I'm just saying, you know, we're all trained to say Saoirse. But anyway, Also, when I say Ireland, I should be specific. It's Belfast, which accounts for why Michael Fassbender plays the Republican dad of one of the lads. So, and Michael Fassbender is not the real life dad of one of these guys. So he's a very great actor who's brought in. Oh my God, this film is the most fun you will have in the cinema.
Wow, cool.
It's laden with sex, drugs, and cartoon scribbled English subtitles. It does have hyperbolized cliches of run-ins with the police and that sort of thing, which is why it's semi-autobiographical. But broadly speaking, it tells the story of their rise to fame. And moreover, it's like a two-finger salute to the establishment who traditionally try to repress the speaking of indigenous languages.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Sounds like a bit of a musical as well.
Well, it's not a musical, but they do perform their numbers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it
Like
musical.
a Star is Born style musical.
Well,
Concert film musical.
Well, no. What I would say is when they go to the club and when there's a depiction of them going to the club and performing, then we get a little bit of the song. Yeah.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But it's not. It's diegetic, non-diegetic.
Yeah.
Diegetic. It's like it's within the film and it's them performing. Yeah. It's not like Rocket Man or Bohemian Rhapsody. Or anything like
I was
that.
meaning more diegetic musical.
Yeah. So, So, Kneecap. It's so fun. It's exhilarating. I think Doug said it was the most fun he's had in the cinema all year.
Wow.
Apart from Gut Instinct, which is obviously an extremely good film that bears no relation to what we're talking about today.
I mean, a shout out to Gut Instinct, which is Doug's film and Sarah's film, really, because you're the narrator in it.
That's right. So quick pivot to Gut Instinct, which is exploding into cinemas at the moment. But yes, so there we go. That was Kneecap. That was my big surprise of the year. Nice. Okay, so I was a bit too excited with all that because what I did want to say is a shout out to Rebel Ridge. And Rebel Ridge is on Netflix. And that was a surprise, not because I thought it was going to be rubbish or because I didn't know anything about it, but Rebel Ridge just, and maybe we'll talk about it more and maybe we won't. And it's on Netflix.
Is Rebel Ridge in Kneecap?
No, it's nothing to do with it. Sorry.
Oh,
No.
So what's Rebel Ridge? Is Rebel Ridge another different film?
Yeah. It was going to be my other surprise, which was so that's why I'm just naughtily doing a shout out.
Sneaking one in.
I'm sneaking in. A quick shout out to Rebel Ridge, which is on Netflix, and which is an astonishingly, surprisingly brilliant, amazing, fun action thriller film. Really no relation at all. I am naughty because we were being strict. So.
All right. Okay. Shall I jump in with mine?
Surprise.
So I was not really looking forward to this film that much. I was thinking it's overly long. It's going to be a two-parter. Sarah hadn't really enjoyed it.
Oh my goodness.
And
you're not going to say what I think you're
Yeah,
going to say.
is.
my biggest surprise, and definitely in my top 5 of this year, is Wicked.
Holy cow.
Wicked Part 1.
Have you seen it?
No, and I will not.
Okay.
Well, you might change your mind after this
Okay,
film.
yeah.
So I went along
Surprising.
with one of my best friends who is a huge Wicked fan. She's seen it in 3 different locations. I saw it on a Wednesday night with a packed audience. It was full. And a whole bunch of my musical theatre friends all arrived. A lot of them had done the show Wicked in Auckland a couple of years ago. And I was emotional within the first 5 minutes. And then when I finished the film, the whole cinema was quiet. Because
Wow.
there was sniffles and it was such a wonderful experience. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes long with 20 minutes of ads and trailers. You're looking at a 3-hour, camp out in the theatre.
Yeah.
But I just thought Wicked was one of the greatest
was
film.
wicked?
It was Wicked. It was one of the best film experiences I've had in a long
Wow.
time.
Holy cow.
I thought the 2 leads were just
Mesmerizing.
just magnetic. Ariana Grande was brilliant.
I think she's brilliant.
And
Absolutely.
I absolutely fell in love with Cynthia Erivo
Yeah.
as Elphaba. And Elphaba is not necessarily she's the lead of the show. It's her story. Well, it's their story, but on stage you only really get her story through her songs.
Yeah.
And in this film, with the close-ups, with
Yeah.
the performance of Cynthia Erivo, you get a sense of the layered nature of what's happening for her in this story, and the kind of themes of otherness, of fascism, of
Heartache.
heartache. But I think just the bigger themes of this world tells a story about the Wicked Witch of the West that is out of her control. And obviously, you've yet to see part 2 yet, but it doubles down on that narrative and. I think you get
Well,
to
something
see
has
into...
to get her to becoming the Wicked Witch of the West, right? Because it's the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Well, it's a retelling. It's a commentary on history and how we tell history and whose story are we telling. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that you can watch Wicked as a prequel to The Wizard of Oz.
Got you.
It is.
So it's not like Anakin Skywalker turning into Darth Vader.
No.
No. Okay.
No. But
Yeah.
it is if it's told as this is how the history was told and this is what the story was, but actually if we go back and look at what actually happened. But they're playing with the pieces, right? I think very clearly in The Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
the Wicked Witch of the West is very much one of
Yeah.
the greatest villains of all time. But
Yeah.
the Elphaba in Wicked is quite a different story. And
Yeah.
so I just thought it was wonderful. I thought John M. Chu did a phenomenal job with just his clarity of vision. He clearly knew what movie he wanted to make, which is why the 2040 never, to me, it never felt languid. And it adds in things from the book that is not present in the stage musical that
Yeah.
felt purposeful and relevant to the story they were telling.
Really?
And I just think I get frustrated with movie musicals where they have to cull so much of the story.
Yeah.
And everything feels a little bit rushed. Characters don't quite make sense. But everything was given its time and space. I just loved it.
Wow.
And I want to see it again, and I haven't had a chance. I want to watch it with my mum.
Yeah.
I want to watch it with my sisters. People there's this trend happening on TikTok where sort of grown straight men are going in begrudgingly watching it with their girlfriends and wives and coming out at emotional messes.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's my biggest surprise of 2024.
And can I just
Alright.
check? You were already a fan of the music, weren't you?
I'd seen the musical here in Auckland with my friends. I went and saw it in Broadway earlier this year with my parents. That was an amazing experience. I had a bad attitude about Wicked until I saw an actual proper version of it, and I finally got what the show
What
was
was your bad
about.
attitude?
I was like, oh, it's kind of saccharine and corny and, very sort of like la 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 la. But when I watched the show and I got a sense of the commentary that it was saying, I was like, oh, this is a show about friendship. It's a show about the stories we tell. It's a story about prejudice and othering. It just kind of hit me. It hit me emotionally.
And did you think it was good musically when you first... But the reason I'm asking, and I appreciate we're not doing a whole podcast on Wicked, forgive me, but I really didn't love it at all. And I was watching it fresh off the bat, right? I hadn't heard a single song, including Defying Gravity, not to my knowledge, and I didn't know the story. So I was totally coming in fresh and I was totally underwhelmed musically.
I think that's another thing. I'm not a huge fan of Idina Menzel's voice.
No.
I love her as an actor. I actually quite
Yeah.
like her as an actor, but I'm not a huge fan of her. And that's why
Neither.
I've never really connected with the
Frozen.
songs in Frozen.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I went into Wicked with a poor attitude, because I wasn't enamored with the music.
Yeah.
But no, I've been completely changed.
Okay.
I often find though you aren't a fan of modern musical
Yeah, that's
music.
true. Yeah.
But then I wonder if you sit with it, whether you would shift.
Well, Wicked's a little different because it's not really modern, right? It's
It's 24 years
ago,
old. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, no,
and it's because the whole thing about Wicked is just like, it's funny you bring up Revenge of the Sith, because both those properties came out at a time when George Bush was in power, and they are very much commentaries about the Bush administration and kind of how liberal entertainers would deal with that via the medium of theatre or film.
Right.
Which is where a lot of the political stuff comes in, because the book is very different from the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they don't bring across some of the more edgier pieces. of it.
And edgy they are.
Yeah, but there's like bestiality, and I think Elphaba is very much an evil character in the book, isn't she? She's not nuanced.
Many more shades of grey.
Yeah. What I will say as well, the film does, and I don't want to spoil this too much, but the nods that they bring in from The Wizard of Oz, the visual cues, there are some really fun bits, especially someone who knows the show and knows that that's not in the show.
Right.
Like, I see what you're doing there.
Okay.
That's very clever.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
Ah, well, I
it's
love
my
that you
biggest
loved
surprise.
it. I definitely.
Right, should we kick into our biggest disappointment?
Yes.
Sarah, do you want to start us off with that?
Yes.
Is it going to be Wicked?
No, because I didn't have any expectations of it. No. So, I shan't make the mistake of mentioning other disappointments. But if I'm going to think about disappointment as being a film that I was really looking forward to and then disappointed by,
Which is what this category is.
Yeah, yes, that's true. But I could say Megalopolis, except that I was cautious going into it.
Yeah, right.
So I
it's
guess
like me with Joker Folie à Deux. It was probably the biggest.
That's right. So you see, so Folie à Deux wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but I was cautious going in. So I suppose the difference that I mean is, I thought that Mean Girls was going to be great, and it was not. And as I wrote in my review, the biggest problem with this movie of the Broadway show based on the 2004 classic teen comedy is how unnecessary it feels. So I found it to be a plodding musical. It repeated too much of what I felt had been done before. And I thought, I don't think necessarily I was a massive Lindsay Lohan fan, but I think she did a blimmin' good job in Mean Girls. Yeah. And I know that she became tabloid fodder thereafter, and, pretty much her legacy.
All this in the original film, they're just...
Rachel McAdams Rachel McAdams and Amanda Seyfried and Lizzie Kaplan were all amazing. Yeah. And so, obviously Renee Rapp, who now plays Regina George on Broadway, she's terrific, but she's doing a Broadway performance in a movie, and I just didn't find anything else about the film inspiring at all. I don't care for Angourie Rice, who was the young lass who plays the new Lindsay Lohan. I don't mean I don't care about her, but she's just a cute but insipid 23-year-old Australian,
I did think Ali Carvalho is that her name?
Yes, she is.
She was brilliant.
And actually, I agree with you because
as Janice, and they changed her last name to Imeki.
And so, funnily enough, I had mentioned that the two narrators, and one of whom I hadn't realised at the time was Moana, who I would be seeing again by the end of the year. The two narrators are brilliant, very talented, and super great.
Which is the Damien character and the Janice character.
That's correct.
Yeah, right, the friends.
So, and they were great in the original, and they're great in the remake. But otherwise, it just felt like. Just not keen on it at all. And so one thing that I wrote here, why on earth would the youth of today, who are all about progressive politics and embrace of all things diverse and a slightly more conservative approach to sex and shaming, why would they be remotely interested in what the remake is saying? Because they know that already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like that, and was it 21 or 22 Jump Street?
Yeah.
There's that whole thing where the two leads go into the school and they try to be cool, but it's actually the kind of cool kids are the queer art nerds,
right?
And they're completely out of their depth.
It's like our kids nowadays know. They couldn't care less about Regina George. Yeah. And also, that's a ghastly song. I mean, that is the worst hook in musical history. I am Regina. I mean, it's not quite like that, but it pretty much is in my head. Yeah. Awful. So that was a massive disappointment because I had thought, woohoo, that would be fun. They could really do something clever here, and they really didn't. So that's, and I finished off in my review. I said what was once at least a high merit is now not achieved.
Oh, for our international listeners, that is our National Certificate of Education for high school students.
Exactly.
Well, I may as well jump in here to say that my biggest disappointment of the year is also Mean Girls.
Amazing!
Wow!
And I felt that it was a nice kind of balancing of this big surprise with the Wicked musical and Mean Girls. I want to say both films, and not just these two films, we've talked about this before, seem to hide the fact that they are musicals.
Yeah, and
their promotion.
In the trailer and that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other thing that Wicked's done, which I've seen a lot of talk about, and there's other movies like the Spider-Man film and
Part 1, Part
hiding
2.
that there are Part 1, Part 2.
Wait, is it true, Jeremy, that and Sarah, that when the title comes on screen, it says Wicked, and then in tiny little font underneath, the Part 1 just goes across the screen.
I mean, I remember it's definitely there. I didn't mind that because...
Well, because by then you know.
Yeah.
By the time you've gone into the film, surely you know.
Well, I hope so.
Or maybe one doesn't know.
I didn't mind though, because with movie musicals, one of the biggest problems you have is turning a 2-act structure into a 3-act structure.
Well, that's the thing, right? What if there was something that movies used to do that could give you a bit of a break in between to go to the loo and get some concessions? And musicals did it all the time.
Yeah. And so, should we have an intermission now, team? A word from our sponsors. So yeah, Mean Girls. I don't know. Like, I think I wouldn't say I was going into it sort of thinking it was going to be the greatest time of my life.
No.
But I love the idea of turning classic films like this. Like, I love the Legally Blonde musical, and I would love to see a film of that because the music's great. I agree with you. My Name is Regina George hook is not good.
No.
I didn't find the music that great, really, and I'm a huge fan of what's Tina Fey's husband's name? The work that he does on the TV shows. You know, he's written lots of the music. I thought that the film didn't have a clear enough perspective or reason to exist.
No, that's exactly right.
And I agree with you. The Katie Heron or whatever her name is, lead, very average.
Yeah.
I thought Renee Rapp was fine. It's big shoes to fill, Rachel McAdams' performance as Regina George. That's one of the greatest, again, villain performances of cinema history.
But of course, it wasn't a musical originally, so Regina didn't have to sing originally. So this Regina singing as powerfully as she does is clearly her key selling point.
Yeah.
That, or her you know what I mean? Her unique selling point even. But
it was okay.
But it doesn't make... She wasn't like the nastiest person on the planet.
Yeah. And I think the whole... You know how I feel about aspect ratios changing during films, aka Christopher Nolan. But in this one, they make this choice that whenever the kind of Mean Girls sing, it changes to a music video aspect ratio. And then it changes back to... It's very strange.
Yeah.
I think it just comes back to that point. There's not a clear enough perspective. It's not... Whereas again... For me, for Wicked, it was so clear. There was such a clarity of vision in that film that was very lacking in the Mean Girls musical. There you go. Okay. William, what's your biggest disappointment of 2024?
All right. So, in terms of disappointments, I mean, this has to be something emotive, right? It has to be something that you're so looking forward to, that you hold up to the highest regard, and then when you watch it, oh dear.
You're crushed.
Crushed.
Yeah.
Crushed. So in terms of movies, I mean, just kind of bring it up as a little side thing. Furiosa, I was so looking forward to this. We've talked about it. Jeremy, you and I hold Fury Road, you know, it's up on its own plinth, right? And Furiosa was okay. You know, it was fine. But there was something even more crushing. And I think the quote from Aaron Eckhart in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight sums it up the best. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Guys, and I know this might be contentious, The Bear Season 3.
Wow. So we're going to go with TV.
I am so heartbroken that, again, unlike Ted Lasso, which to me completely crapped the bed in Season 2, The Bear Season 1 and Season 2
were both
like
amazing.
Peak, peak television.
They really were.
And firing on all cylinders. The best cast on TV, the best writing. The acting is phenomenal.
The direction, real art.
Yes, elevating television beyond, just a serialized form of storytelling. So I went into Season 3 with the highest of expectations. And the first couple of episodes are like, okay, it's not bad, and I understand it's trying to get you back into the rhythm of the show.
But we'll see where this goes.
Yeah.
It doesn't really go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere.
No.
There's no momentum.
It's leading into a longer season.
A second half.
Yeah.
What you were talking about with Wicked Part 1 and Part 2.
Does it say The Bear Season 3
Part 1? What
disappearing in steam into the extractor fan. Does it say that?
It's like the rug just going whoop, yoinked.
I think it does have a to be continued at the end of the season.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
Which is such a letdown.
So something just feels off about this whole season. I think part of it is just like what happened with Arrested Development Season 4, where the cast got so famous in between seasons.
Right.
And they're just off doing other things, and you can't really have that chemistry if not everyone's on set at the same time, right?
That's a very interesting point. Because those kids have, exploded
they're everywhere.
into super... You're absolutely
Especially
right.
Io Debris.
Yeah.
She's busy.
Yeah.
Busy.
And Jeremy Allen White doing the Iron Claw and a bunch of other
Eva
things.
Moss Baccarat, who's doing Star Wars and Fantastic Four. He's the Thing.
Yeah.
Like it's really exciting stuff, and I love it. But it really messes with the chemistry they have. And so in the place of that camaraderie, what you have is these really weird gimmicks. There's some awful cameos, some of the worst cameos I've ever seen in my life.
Cena?
Oh, spoilers. John Cena, sorry. Yes, well, the cat's out of the bag. John Cena sucks. Like, I love him in other things. I'm
But
sorry.
he's not playing himself. He's playing a character.
He's playing the character, and it's just the whole show grounds to a whole where the rest of the cast is like, hey guys, we got John Cena.
Is it kind of like Taika Waititi's latest films? Like I've talked about it with Natalie Portman and Thor. What is it? Love and Thunder. Mm-hmm. We're being funny. We're having fun being funny, and it's not funny.
Nah, it's not.
Yeah,
It feels so awkward.
Yeah.
Real orcs. It starts off with other celebrity chef cameos. When Thomas Keller appears in the first episode, I was like, oh, that's cool. I know who he is.
that first episode was glorious.
Dreamlike. Yeah, I really enjoyed
Atticus
that.
Ross and Trent Reznor's score.
Yeah.
That
I
was
watched the
amazing.
first episode of season 3, and I think we watched the second episode, and then I went, if they're just going to shout at each other, I'm not interested, because it's becoming, not because I don't like shouting, I don't mind if
It's
Succession
just kind
does
of
it.
repeating.
Yeah.
Of the
It
same
just felt
themes.
repetitive,
Yeah.
and it felt that, are you telling me what to do? Am I telling you what to do? You're telling me what to do.
And I do
you
think
think
the
I'm
Sydney,
telling you what?
I think
and
the
it's just-
Sydney character,
Same.
it became a little bit frustrating.
Same.
I mean, my experience was I finally got into The Bear this year.
I
We
know,
were
because
talking about
normally
it.
we
Yeah.
nag you to watch
Yeah.
it. And you're like,
Yeah, I just finally had the kind of bandwidth to really engage with something, and I absolutely loved season 1 and season 2, and because I watched it in a rolling kind of fashion,
Yeah.
and I watched it with my friend at the time, flatmate. She was really into it. We watched the 3rd season together. I don't know. It had a quality for me that was it just sort of carried on. So I wasn't as enamored with the first 2 seasons. I just carried on watching
Yeah.
it. So I get.
whereas we had to wait.
I get the criticism, and I don't disagree with the criticism. But for me, I was like, oh, it's all good. So I'll just wait for season
Okay.
4 and see where it goes.
Nice.
So did you watch all of the
Yeah,
season?
yeah. I had to see where it went, and to find out that it ultimately went nowhere. To be hit in the face with a to be continued, like, you can't do this. The show's been spinning its wheels for 4 episodes straight.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, this is very, very minor spoilers. The whole hook of season 3 is, the restaurant review. It's coming out. It's coming out. And at the end, it doesn't come out, and you're still waiting. Like, you cannot do this on a narrative level and expect your audience to go along with it. It's just
I think-
How long have we
spinning
meant to
its
be
wheels.
waiting?
I will say this. I do think there are 2 big question marks that season ends on. One of them you just alluded to. There's another one which I won't spoil, but that which has been building up and building up and building up. I feel like from a storytelling perspective, I will give it the opportunity to start season 4 with a definitive decision. Like, if it just carries on spinning its wheels,
yeah.
I'm going to lose interest real fast.
Totally hear you.
But if there's been some significant shift, if there's
Yeah.
a time jump, if the decisions
like they
that
got
are
a
hinted
review
at,
and all of a sudden they're in a major hotel.
yeah, and certain people are not present anymore, like that
Yes,
kind of
yes,
thing. Like,
okay.
I think that will, for me, be okay, because then
Well, then
all the
they can-
groundwork's been done for that decision, and then they can unpack that
That's
decision.
right, and they can
in
give us all the
season.
flashbacks they want, and over
Yeah.
the course of the season, they
Nice,
can
I like that.
do your Anakin to Darth Vader kind
Yeah.
of connectivity or something. Yeah.
So I think that if it does that,
Yeah.
or a version of that,
Shall we
I will
email
be
them?
okay. Yeah. Well,
Send them
actually,
this
I
episode.
said to just for the listeners, I was messaging in our group chat as I was listening to our White Lotus episode, and we made some predictions and some things in that totally came to pass
Hey.
in
I
season 2 and season 3.
Right.
And I was like, oh, we were onto something. Is Mike White listening to our podcast?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, anyways. Carry on.
Anyway, so that's the best season 3 for me. Just this wasted opportunity of a show that, for me, was one of the best things I've seen in years.
Will you watch?
I will, but with greatly tempered expectations.
Yeah.
There's episodes later on which should have hit me emotionally. There's an episode where Jamie Lee Curtis comes back.
Yeah,
And I
amazing.
found out I hated that episode because of
okay.
everything building up to it. It's like you have an episode of nothing, followed by an episode of nothing, followed by that episode, and by then it's like, nah, show,
Too late.
you're just crawling up your own butt. I don't need this experimentation if you've lost your way about what the show is about in the first place,
Yeah.
right? Which is characters in a restaurant. And anyway, I was just in a real foul mood finishing this and going, oh dear, oh dearie,
It does
me.
remind me, like, you bring up Ted Lasso, and I totally think about
Yeah.
that, because I've only watched 1 episode of season 3. I never carried on with that, because I was just so frustrated by some of the choices made in season 2. So I get it. All right, should we move into Wildcard?
Sure.
Yeah? I might start us off with my
it.
Wildcard.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I said this to the 2 of you that I really wanted to talk about this film regardless of where it is, and I have to put it here because I want to just talk about it again. I don't know if it really fits the category of Wildcard. Maybe it does, because it's a film that I have already watched 3 times at the cinema within one weekend. I will continue to watch this. I will buy this on Blu-ray because I need to add it to my collection, which is Alien Romulus.
Oh, wow.
And it's a wildcard because it is the film that fills me with the most joy with what the choices that it made. Definitely, if you've listened to our Romulus episode, you'll know that Alien is my favourite film. If you listen to most of our episodes, you'll know that Alien is my favourite film. But also you'll know that we had criticisms about the way that they depicted Rook, the version of Ian Holm.
Ooh, shut up.
And I think that definitely, it stood out to me. The first viewing, the second viewing, the third viewing, it's always going to stand out to me as a misstep of that movie. But apart from that, it's a wildly fun ride. Kaylee Spiney, is it Kaylee Spiney?
Yeah.
Just wonderful performances, as well as her brother Andy, played by the fantastic David Johnson. I can't wait to watch this movie again. I can't wait to watch this over the summer with my family members that are Alien fans. I've got certain siblings that we watched Aliens many years ago, and one of them the whole time through she was going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, and then she's like, that was the most stressful experience I've ever watched. So I can't wait to watch this movie with them. My mum, who's a big Aliens fan but always watches it through her fingers, she's like, it looks really scary. I was like, oh, you wait, mum. You want horror? How about adding some great Romulus metaphors? That's my wild card of 2024.
Oh, that's nice.
I love that. I love it. I mean, I just found that film to be so much fun. Again, guys, you can listen back to the episode, but it's just shocking how good it is. Alien sequels, not a huge fan of the Prometheus movies, but it's just so hit and miss, right? And for, this film to come in blaring, it was supposed to be direct to streaming, but to be so confident and to have such a good time kind of merging together these different facets of the franchise and making it just a solid as popcorn sci-fi horror action movie. Incredible.
And as we said at the time, what a wonderful introduction for the young people, for the youth of today who don't have Jeremy Downing as a big brother and haven't therefore been force-fed Alien movies growing up. I mean, it's a really assured teen version of an Alien movie, which kind of makes you go, I can't believe it's been 40 years or whatever, or longer, and that they didn't do one earlier in a way, because you're always looking for an iteration, aren't you? When you've got a franchise.
They've been trying to figure that out. I mean, it's made like a lot of money. So they're going to be making more something. And I'm here for it. I think for me, there's been enough misfires with the Aliens films to be okay with some continued experimentation. We talked about that in that episode. But, as long as it's got an exciting couple of sequences, and I think we talked about at the time when the what's her name? As Aileen, what's her character's name? Is it Naravo? The young woman who gets the first face hug on her face. When she's running through the ship, and then they kind of hit the joystick of the ship and it careens off and the lights go down the hallway. That whole sequence is amazing.
That's true.
And I think as long as it connects to the lore in some way that's intelligent and they're not, not watching their own films, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sarah, what's your wildcard film of 2024?
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I might have, but I won't have talked about it on a podcast because it didn't, unfortunately, get a proper release here. In the film festival, I happened upon a documentary, oh my goodness, this is the most incredible film I saw all year, called Grand Theft Hamlet. Have I discussed this with you?
Yes, you have, and had someone else talking about it recently as well.
Oh my word. So for thems of you listening who don't know, Grand Theft Hamlet is a documentary, I would say a very low budget documentary that was made during the pandemic. In around 2020, Britain was going through the first of many serious, heavy lockdowns, and there were a couple of British actors of, about the age of 40, a couple of blokes who weren't getting out there and getting any acting work. So one of them found he was spending a lot of time online playing Grand Theft Auto, and then he and his friend, they decided that what they would do is they would go into the game of Grand Theft Auto and they would audition anybody who wanted to audition to perform in a production of Hamlet within the game. So his wife, it turns out, decided, she had the forethought to say, well, look, I'd like to film what you're doing. Can I record everything? So it's all obviously recorded through the computer. because that's the way you make a film about a video game. And the film it was absolutely mind-blowing for me, because I have not played Grand Theft Auto. So I know little about video games, and not a great deal about Hamlet, but more about Hamlet than video gaming. And to me, I haven't laughed so much, I haven't been so surprised at things, because it would have, and I don't think this counts as spoilers, it was so hilarious. So the big revelation for me is that when you're in the game, you're in your avatar, and you can't really change the look of your avatar, I think. So you are looking the way you're looking. So, and these British blokes, and they're quite posh fellows going in there, and they're like, well, I think we need to, and you can hear them through their headphones, obviously. I think we need to put up an audition notice. Have you had anyone come along? Well, yes, there is, and then they'll say some strange username wants to come. So is there a Hollywood Bowl or something like that? There's
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's a Hollywood Bowl.
There's different locations.
Stage, exactly, that's deserted.
franchise.
So they're like, well, why don't we do the auditions there? So they were in the game there, and somebody is coming towards them, and they're like, oh, good, he is turning up. Oh, that's a relief, because we didn't know if he was going to come. All right. Oh, hang on. No, he's getting a gun out. And then they're like, oh, I think he's trying to kill us. Don't kill us. We're just auditioning for a play. And suddenly, and then it goes, what's it go? Like, not...
Wasted.
Yeah, it goes wasted. He's like, oh, God. So then they have to come back. So then they're trying to do the rehearsal. And in the background, you hear the cop cars and everything going. Because Grand Theft Auto, the world of, is happening, is carrying on regardless.
It's amazing.
And then random people will show up and be all like, all like drunk or whatever. And they'll, it's just extraordinary. So one of the things that blew my mind is, for the production, they're like, you know what we're going to need? We're going to need an aeroplane, and we're going to need a blimp. And can you get one? And then you can buy things within the game, right?
Yeah.
So somebody manages to secure them a plane for the use in one of the scenes or something. I mean, it's just extraordinary.
Where can you watch this? Is it online anywhere now?
Absolutely no idea.
Ah.
It was so niche, and it
Wow.
was in the film festival, and I'm so glad I saw it, because I didn't think it would be easy
I
to
had
get
someone else
hold
raving to me about it. I was like, yeah, I know about this. My friend Sarah's gone on about this film.
Extraordinary film. So, we've
Oh,
got to try and find it.
I gotta watch this.
You've gotta watch it.
I'm a fan of the game and of Hamlet.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was hilarious.
And of documentaries. Yeah.
And it was hilarious. So yeah, there we go. That is my
Grand
wildest of
Theft
wild
Hamlet.
cards, my brothers. There we go.
Nice. William, what's your wild card of this year?
Well, surprising enough, I also have a wild card that is low budget, indie, could be construed as a documentary, heavily inspired by video games, and I'm just going to read the description on IMDb. Oh, actually, this is on Apple, on Apple Movies. A drunken Applejack salesman must go from zero to hero and become North America's greatest fur trapper by defeating hundreds of beavers.
Oh yes, you love that
Oh
film.
my goodness. Is Doug still in the room? Doug?
He's-
I love hundreds of beavers!
He's
Is
gone
it called
for a
Hundreds of
swim.
Beavers?
Hundreds of beavers.
Yeah.
Yes, so this is an extraordinary movie. Extraordinary. It is a low-budget, black and white silent film made in 2022, available for wide release in 2024, and of course, me, being myself, watched it on a plane, which actually was a wonderful place to see it, because you're kind of sleep deprived, the oxygen is slightly too high, and I'm in for a ride.
Yeah.
It is a film about, I guess, gags. It's a scientific construction of a series of gags that culminates into greater gags and greater gags and greater gags. Sorry, that's very, very obtuse. What it is, of course, is a live-action Looney Tunes cartoon.
Wow.
Except feature-length, right? So it's inspired by all sorts of stuff. Very, very keenly inspired by stuff like Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Jackie Chan, like the great physical comedians, whether they be silent or not. But also heaps of stuff from modern times. I mean, the filmmakers have come out to say that stuff like Samurai Jack, Adventure Time, a lot of video games. I mean, this feels very much like a LucasArts point-and-click adventure game.
Yeah.
They flat out said that one of their primary inspirations was Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Because what it is it's a very, very jokey thing about this dude trying to kill these beavers to win the heart of his lady love. Okay. And yet, the beavers are just guys in mascot outfits. So it's super low budget. They're filming in Wisconsin, so in real snow, and this is filmed over the pandemic. But of course, it is about the setup and the payoff of the gags, and how, again, the gags construct her storytelling. I've never seen something so systems-based. It was like the movie was written by an engineer. Because everything that you find at the start of the movie, and the movie is very much in a 3-act structure, it comes back into play in Act 2 and in Act 3, and keeps building and building and building. So at the beginning, he's just trying to stay alive. He learns how to hunt and trap from a trapper. He starts trapping all sorts of animals using the skills he's learned along the way. And an inventory, this is where the video game stuff comes in, that he starts purchasing using items that he's discovered along the way, and creating these wonderful physics-based monstrosities, which is where the Breath of the Wild comes in. And all throughout is just the most clever, most exciting, most, I would say, ingenious depictions of visual jokes I have seen in a long time. And really, comedy is really difficult to do, especially visual comedy.
Yeah.
And for such a low budget, I mean, this is what, like 150,000, I think was their budget. And it's all done on After Effects. It's all done just by mates, right? People who wanted to act as beavers who weren't paid in anything, apart from beer.
Act as beavers, exactly. Yeah.
And for
There's
everything,
a word for those people.
for everything to come together so satisfyingly, and to be, I think, one of the great inspirations and also one of the great examples of what indie film can be. Because now, gosh, if you have the know-how and the gumption to go film in the Wisconsin Northwoods, hypothetically anyone can make this movie.
Yeah.
And it is a
If you can find enough people to dress up
to dress
as
as
beavers in the woods of Wisconsin.
I
But
think they bought the beaver costumes from Temu, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why it's made such waves
Yeah.
over the year, because I think it is one of the finest comedies in the last 10 years.
Wow, you have sold that to me
Yeah.
more than, because, you know, my
I didn't know what it was when you were talking about it.
No,
before.
neither. The lovely Doug Dillerman actually interviewed the filmmakers, and his interview is in Filmmaker magazine, available online and in print. And so did he share a copy of that with
did,
you?
yeah,
So that
yeah.
would have good insights and whatnot. But now you've made me think maybe even I want to see it. And can I just say, gentlemen, it's on Apple TV
Yes,
or
it
Apple
is.
Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
What do we call that now?
It's also
Apple.
Apple TV.
Right.
It's also on YouTube for rent.
Oh,
yeah.
right, okay. So it's on Apple. Incidentally,
actually,
Grand
maybe that's
Theft
what
Hamlet
yeah.
is on Apple as well.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes,
of course.
So
Because
that's
that
lucky.
could also be on YouTube too.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Hamlet.
Might be, but it's also on Apple. So yeah.
So yeah, what a film. Again, just had the greatest of times sitting in my little airplane seat, laughing my butt off.
That is
Nice.
that is a great option for Wildcard. Yeah, bravo.
Great. Well, should we talk about our best television of the year?
Sure.
Who wants to kick us off?
All right, I'll
William,
continue
go.
on
Yeah,
if you
nice.
guys want. Guys, it's pretty well-founded by now that I love animated things. I like a good cartoon.
You do like a good cartoon.
But the thing is, I don't think I've ever on the show, with you guys in general, talked about anime. I'm not a big anime guy, Japanese animation.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I think in the last 10 years, I just haven't been following anime. And that's not because anime is bad or I don't like it. It's just oftentimes a series run on forever and I don't have the time or energy to watch it. And so we're going to have a bit of a change this year, and I will present a new anime series which is on Netflix. It was half funded by Netflix, from Studio Trigger, called Dungeon Meshi, or the English name Delicious in Dungeon. And it's a funny thing because I think as my list went on, I was trying to put it together, there were a lot of connections, which of course is half of course in cinema in context.
Yeah.
But I felt like almost every single one of my recommendations and my most disappointed have a lot of good connective tissue. So, Delicious in Dungeon is it starts off as a very generic fantasy show. The world is inspired by Dungeons and Dragons and video games, and it's a bunch of explorers going in to explore what's known as the Golden Kingdom, this underground dungeon where eons ago a mage promised whoever could reach him and his remains the power to the kingdom, in this riches and in this power. And yet it's quite a way down to the depths of the dungeon.
In Japan? Japanese language?
No. I watched the English dub, and the English dub is very, very good.
But it's naturally Japanese language, and is it sort of set in...
No, it's set in fantasy land.
Okay.
And very, very D&D.
Okay.
If you know the old video game Wizardry, kind of that vibe,
Okay.
right? So there's dwarves and elves and, classes and whatnot. And the thing is, so this is based on the manga that recently finished from Ryoko Kui. She is a mangaka who loves world building, and the whole notion is she took her love of video games, again, like what we were just talking about, Sarah, and translated it into a world where the logic of the world is probably more important than the world itself.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? Well, you venture down into a dungeon, you're fighting goblins and dragons and whatnot. You're going to need to eat something, right? You're going to need to bathe. You can't just venture down for weeks with no supplies. And so what happens is our party, which is made up of Laios, a tall man swordsman, Masu, this elven mage, Chuchuk, a halfling locksmith, and they meet up with Senshi, who's a dwarf later on. They figure that the best way to sustain their party's progress is not to buy supplies from the top and then slowly work their way through to the final goal. They're going to kill monsters and cook monsters. And so the show, it's not really a fantasy exploration show. It's a cooking show.
Oh, right. Okay.
It is a gourmet show.
Is it another Breath of the Wild inspired?
Yes, also heavily focused on what Breath of the Wild does, which is dum dum dum.
Yeah. So Breath of the Wild, you it's a computer game, and you forage around, you find apples and all sorts of different ingredients, and then you just sort of smash them together in a cooking pot and see what comes out.
Oh.
You might happen upon a gourmet meal that gives you lots of hearts,
On that note, my friend last week made a meal, asked ChatGPT, said, this is what I've got in the fridge, what should I make? And ChatGPT gave him an almost solid idea.
Wow.
But threw in one of the things that kind of made it really not work. Otherwise, if you'd taken that out, logically, you would have gone, yeah, actually, those other four things go quite nicely to... Oh, I know. Included capsicum, which threw it out. Otherwise, it was honey and brie and blueberries and pita bread, which actually works quite nicely. Do you know what I mean? But if you stick the capsicum in, no. so yeah, I feel you. Okay, yeah. Anyway,
It's
yeah.
pixelated.
Yeah.
So the show is a hilarious blend of dungeon crawler and cooking show.
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, you got peanut butter in my chocolate, but boy, do these Reese's Pieces taste delicious. And they take the cooking show element completely seriously. There are no winks or nods.
Yeah.
It shows you all the steps of how to, for example, skin and eat a basilisk. What part is poisonous, how to prepare it, how to skim off the fat at the top, and then it presents you with the meal, and it's illustrated in beautiful colors.
That's amazing.
It's such a fun watch.
Yeah.
And also, kind of going back, it is purely character driven as well. Like, the story is there, and the story is fine. But it is the characters in the world that inhabit this thing and who are so obsessed with eating healthy that just makes it sing. So I was so happy I followed along with Delicious in Dungeon. They were releasing one episode a week on Netflix. And so it was just this wonderful thing. Every time Tuesday came along, it was like, oh, let's check out the new episode. And yeah, just a real feel-good time.
Is it appropriate for children?
It's rated R16, which is weird because it's mostly pretty goofy. But there are some episodes where the monster attacks and the violence are a little bit intense. So if people are okay with violence...
It's not sexual content.
No.
Because I'm thinking about what's the anime where they eat food and have orgasms?
Oh dear.
That's not appropriate for children.
I don't think it is.
What's that called? anyways, it's another anime cooking show, and the food's so good, all their clothes blast off and they start groaning around. Both men and women, so it's very kind of...
So very like in terms of sexual content and language and stuff, it's all good. It's just the fantasy violence sometimes gets a little intense. But then it veers back into goofy, and it's like, okay.
I love that. I love taking something that's so well known, like a Dungeons and Dragons property, and throwing it in a food cooking show. Right, shall I jump in with my top TV series? So I've had a good time with TV this year. Like, I actually did enjoy myself with The Bear season 3, but like I said, it rolled off the back of the first 2 seasons. I really enjoyed the House of Dragons season, even though some people were...
Yeah, that was really contentious, right?
Yeah, some people were really critical of it, but I had a good time. But my series is a third season of a comedy series that I didn't necessarily love the first season of, but it's got better and better, and that is Hacks.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Jean Smart and the wonderful, I've got her name written down here, Hannah Einbinder, is that her name?
Yeah.
Hannah Einbinder.
Didn't we talk about Hacks last year?
I don't know if we did.
I think you might have.
I think I might have.
Oh, nice. Well, I really enjoyed season 3. So Jean Smart plays Deborah Vance, the aging comedian, very much in the wheelhouse of Joan Rivers, as well as a number of other comedians that their character's drawing from, hiring the younger Ava Daniels. And they're now in the 3rd season, so it's kind of, they're finding new story narrative plot lines. There's also the supporting cast of Marcus, who plays Deborah's manager, Kayla and Jimmy, who are the agents. Kayla played by Megan Staltler, who's just hilarious. And I guess
that's her breakout role.
Well, she's already she was becoming big online and she'd kind of been popping up around the place, but definitely that's
her show kind of thing, hey?
Yeah, I think so.
That's wonderful.
And Jimmy's played by Paul W. Downs, who's one of the showrunners.
Right.
Him and his wife, I believe, and then and another writer kind of have it. But I do feel like the first season especially was them trying to figure out what their show was. And by this season, there's this real confidence. And what I will say is that the season is generally pretty good, but the final episode, and we talked about this, Sarah, was one of the greatest moments I've had in a long time.
Yeah.
And I was crying, I was laughing, I was like rubbing my hands together for season 4.
Babes, remember you were like, I can't wait to see what the next
finale
episode is. And I went,
not realizing that it was
I think that was it, Jeremy.
Yeah.
And you're like, and you were like, I can see how that is the ending.
Yeah, I know.
But you were a bit disappointed.
Well, I was sort of blown away by what a definitive penultimate. No, what a definitive penultimate episode. Right. And then I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But there is some writing in this season that, like, I was doing an acting class earlier in the year, and we had to kind of find our own scenes. And there's a lot of wonderful two female characters in conversation and conflict and comedy that I would draw those scenes out, and it would take me a bit of time to format them, and I would just provide them for my classmates because, I am not a woman, and so I would not be doing those scenes. But really great writing, and also really great writing for women of a certain age, an older age. Often the writing, for 2 women is younger, right?
Yeah.
So it was just a joyful watch, and I think the performances from Jean Smart and Hannah Einbinder
continue to be good, right?
Yeah, just so good.
Can I say, I know that, again, I was all like, Hacks is amazing. And you were like, I don't feel like season 1 kind of knows. And I was like, yes, it does know what it wants to be. Because I've always thought that it was terrific right from the get-go. And I respect absolutely that you didn't feel the same way. But isn't it amazing and wonderful, and we talk about this on the heel of talking about The Bear, that this season 3 continues. It totally knows what it is. In my view, it still knows. In your view, it now knows. That's both are true. And that it is still consistent, still brilliantly written, and that it is still propulsive, not repulsive, but propulsive. And no wonder it's winning so many Emmys, and I mean, obviously The Bear is also, but it's doing blooming well.
Yeah. And I think my big thing with the first season, which kind of works from the storyline anyway, is that it just wasn't that funny in the sense that the stand-up moments I didn't find that funny.
Right.
And it's that whole thing of, like, we've talked about this before, when a band becomes successful in a film but the song isn't that great, you're like, well, that's not really that believable.
Sure.
Whereas I do feel like the comedy bits caught up in season 3.
Yeah.
Especially when this season is very much about the Deborah Vance character becoming the new Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
And whether that will or won't happen. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a different person in that
Yeah,
film.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
the late night,
Yeah.
the late night job that it's
She was robbed
actually funny
the first time or something. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think its dissection of gender and entertainment is really interesting. The kind of conflict of generations is very much a part of it. How comedy has been at the expense of marginalised groups and the kind of reckoning that Deborah Vance has to go through, and that's where that show really succeeds. Where the gold of their relationship comes through in a creative way.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my series.
Oh.
Nice.
Sarah, wrap up this round for us.
Yeah.
What's your best TV?
I had to
of
cast
this
my
year?
mind back because as I think you know, I'm solo rewatching Breaking Bad, and I can't be bringing that up again. But absolutely, it brings me joy with every TV minute. And TVNZ's After the Party, the New Zealand show with Robin Malcolm and Peter Mullen, which is rightly getting accolades over in Britain now. I just haven't watched enough of it yet to be able to say categorically best show of the year or anything. And probably the fact that I haven't, raced through it speaks to the fact that it isn't. But it's blimmin' great writing, great acting, great everything. But if I cast my mind back, I remember that earlier on this year we watched, and so far there's only been the one season, Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And
that was good.
I don't even remember, I don't think I saw the movie. I know that nobody liked the movie. I couldn't care less about Brangelina falling in love during that movie. The movie itself was nothing to write home about. The show is so different in taking ostensibly the premise, but kind of not really. You've got the incredible performances. I mean, who knew, I always say, who knew that Donald Glover was such a talent? Well, obviously everybody, but he really is a remarkable talent. Never mind the music career, but a fantastic actor and comedic and dramatic actor. And Maya Erskine as Jane. So she's Jane, he's John. And they are ostensibly the match-made assassins who have to pretend to be married. To me, it isn't even... Well, it is. To me, it's a relationship show more than a assassin show, except that there's an incredible set piece, isn't there? Every episode has the setup of, here's the job you have to do. So you're going to get this amazing bit of television out of it somewhere during it where they have to go and do the job. And that's always a fantastic several scenes. But it's the relationship underneath it all as well that's so marvellous. And the fact that they go to marriage counselling. And the fact that they go to marriage counselling where they have to talk around the fact when the marriage counsellor, who I think is played by Sarah Paulson, is saying, well, what is your job? And they have to talk about their job without saying what they are.
So, because I really need to, I wanted to watch this and I haven't got around to it, but the premise is different to the film, right? Because in the film, they are a married couple without realising that they both are spies.
That they both have to kill each other, that's right.
Whereas the...
this one, they're put together as, you're both assassins, and you're going to work as a team.
Yeah, so it's a different premise, which works better as a TV series.
It totally does.
Yeah, and it's got the whole will they, won't they element in it.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Which is sort of dispersed with pretty early on, isn't it? I mean, thank God they don't string out a whole season of, are they going to kiss, or anything like that, But it does have, I mean, I love scenes in which you've got one character who is innocently asking questions, and the characters in the know are truthfully answering in an oblique way. You know what I mean? Where you're getting the two bouts of information, and you and the audience know that this is hilarious.
Like they really lost their head, and then they actually did lose their head.
Exactly, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I do think Mr. and Mrs. Smith is brilliant television, highly recommendable. My sister is a psychotherapist, and I wanted her to watch it because there are a few scenes where they go to the shrink, and I thought, I want you to watch those scenes because they're very well written from a counsellor perspective. You know what I mean? Never mind an assassin perspective. So that would be and I'm looking forward to season 2.
Cool. Shall I kick off our best film chat, and we'll kind of move around the circle? So, I guess There are 3 films this year that have very... Like, I do think Wicked, Alien Romulus, and these next 3 movies are my top 5.
Sure.
And I don't... like, the nuance of which one is on top for me
Yeah.
is actually not as defined as I'm going to suggest in this next little rollout. But my runner-up, or my second runner-up, is a movie that has had a lot of word-of-mouth press this year, and that is The Substance, starring Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, as well as Dennis Quaid. For those of you that don't know what The Substance is, it is a body horror comedy, is the best way I would describe it. I laughed through the entirety of the film. Demi Moore plays a version of herself. She plays an aging Hollywood star that now has this, regular aerobics 80s style television show that she loses due to her age, and is compelled to engage in the substance, which promises a better, younger version of herself, which, is literally birthed from her in the form of Margaret Qualley. And there's this great logic about the film. It is not subtle at all.
No.
The movie makes very clear what it's lampooning, what it's satiring, what it's exploring. And I think it's a better film for that. It doesn't kind of bandy around what its themes are. The performances are phenomenal. The special effects are incredible. My second film would be Civil War, which we've talked about on this podcast.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice.
I still talk about William's quote. I think they should give me back half my ticket because I spent most of the film on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
Which have you heard that before, or did you?
I did.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I got that from, I think, another podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
It was brilliant, and I think that I was talking to a colleague of mine. Her and her son watched it. Her son is one of my students in my media studies class. She said, "Oh my gosh, what a film! We kind of couldn't take our eyes off the screen."
Did you see it? I saw it twice. Did you see it more than once?
I need to see it again. No, I've only seen it once.
I found the second time just as wonderful, but obviously without the grippingness, which is inevitable, isn't it? But it did certainly give an opportunity to soak up different aspects of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that film has such brilliant performance, brilliant actors,
Yeah.
that I'm looking forward to it. I really love the work of Kirsten Dunst. I think she's a very accomplished actor.
Yeah.
And, as a child star, she's crafted out an impressive career for herself. We talked about that when we talked about the episode. And so I loved it. Again, Kaylee Spaney, it really was her year, wasn't it?
And she
Brilliant
was
film.
Priscilla.
Yes, yeah.
So that's 3
Right,
major films
yeah,
for her.
Yeah. But my film of the year is another movie we've done a podcast on, is Dune Part 2.
Oh, wow.
That was such a payoff for Part 1, which was, the film of the year when that came out.
Was Dune Part 1 also a secret Part 1 when advertised? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But I do know that this second part, pays off the things of the first part. The music, contentiously, is not being considered at the Oscars, was incredible.
Yeah.
The performances were amazing. And I just think the confidence with hanging that movie on the... and I can't remember her character's name. Shani? Is it Shani? Shani, the Zendaya character, was so wise. The choice to change that from the text, which William, you explained so wonderfully in our episode on Dune Part 2, was very well... again, clear vision, very clear vision.
Yeah.
The visuals were amazing, and I just think the payoff of action and drama and knowing when to go big and knowing when to go small.
And knowing when to go home.
Yeah,
Oh, wait.
exactly. Which was after the movie, 3 hours later or whatever it was. So Dune Part 2 is my film of the year. Thank you, Denis Villeneuve, for a wonderful double banger.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
William.
All right. Well, it seems like 2024 is the year of the robot. Not only do we have AI, causing all sorts of havoc, not in the real world, in the movies, there were a whole bunch of robot movies, a lot of which I really enjoyed. I mean, this is not on my list, but Transformers 1 was not the best movie in the world, but it made really interesting points about Marxism for kids. And it really reminded me, we can use robots to tell all sorts of stories that we wouldn't possibly do with real live human beings.
Yeah.
They're just a great stand-in for these questions about society. And so my number 3 and my number 2 are both robot movies. My number 3, you've brought up at the beginning of the show, is The Wild Robot. I really enjoyed it. It was, have you guys seen it?
Yes.
I have.
Yes.
I've got thoughts on it, but you go.
Okay, I just found it to be a very, very storybooky movie. It felt like I was reading just a really good child's picture book. I know it's based on a book, not a picture book. But a lot about it is beautiful, both the imagery and the music and the storytelling, because it's a thing that uses robots as a parenting metaphor, and how they go about kind of relating the main character, Roz, who is, the titular wild robot. She gets washed ashore on an abandoned island with all these animals, and she has to rear one of the young animals to adulthood. I just found it
so
really...
that it can fly,
Yes,
migrate,
to
if
migrate.
you will.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the theme of parenthood, the theme of kind of human isolation versus AI's propensity for learning and love and conservation. I was like, there's big themes here. They're not really explored in any depth, but I love that it's putting it out there. And I found it to be really exciting.
Yeah, my experience with that film was so many people raving to me about it. You're going to love it, you're going to cry, get your tissues. And the movie got me offside because I guess part of the story is that there is this dog-eat-dog world in this island. All of the animals are kind of horrible creatures because they're so desperate to survive. And then the Roz character takes a while to emerge. And so it did win me over by the end. I do have a question mark about the logic of... of
all the animals living in peace.
Yeah, but the whole point of the movie is that they can't because they're desperate to eat each other. But what I will say is the animation out the gate is incredible. That kind of 2D on top of 3D feel was quite lovely.
It's like, you guys remember me raving about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Well, they kind of used that and merge it with a very... almost Hayao Miyazaki vibe of... It's
Breath
like
of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild,
Bring it up
exactly.
again.
It looks just like Breath of the Wild,
Yeah.
except done in a huge blockbuster format. Yeah.
Nice.
Let me guess.
Yes.
It's your second film, Robot Dreams?
Well, funny you should say. Also a robot movie about relationships and love and loss.
Also animated.
And animated, yeah. Well guessed, Sarah. Well guessed.
Yeah, it was the robot thing that gave it away.
It's got robot on the title.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Robot Dreams is
beautiful.
incredible.
It's in my top. It was one of my 10 5-star films of the year. So
awesome.
It's a stunning film.
It gave me the same feelings that I got after watching Spike Jonze's Her.
Right.
And I love that feeling,
Yeah.
that sense of extreme melancholy and sadness, but also of joy, of the possibility of new beginnings. So it's a Spanish-French co-production, Robot Dreams, directed by Pablo Berger. Oh, by the way, Wild Robots is Chris Sanders, who is just he used to be a wunderkind. He's not a kind anymore.
Yeah.
But he was the guy behind Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. So great stuff there. But Robot Dreams is based on a graphic novel by Sarah Varon, and it's about anthropomorphic society of animals who live in 80s New York, which is sketched out beautifully.
It's so funny. It's hilarious. Yep.
And the main character, Dog, who is a dog, he's just really lonely.
He just lives alone in his New York apartment.
Plays video games with himself. It's very sad. And so he buys and constructs a robot companion named Robot. And it's a bunch of, a series of little stories about their adventures together in the summertime. And then, of course, something happens and they're separated. And just this beautiful use of color and of animation to explore relationships, right?
And it's really, can I say, and it's old school animation.
Oh, yes.
It's 2D, it's flat.
And we don't
not,
see this anymore
right.
on the big screen.
And it's just what it needs to be. It doesn't need to be, I can see the super glossy hair or anything like that at all. And it's not Inside Out too or anything. But it's magical.
Extraordinary to watch on the big screen.
Yeah.
Just this movie, the relationship is very, very friendship, platonic. If you want to read romantic undertones, they are definitely there. But it's just about how people's lives can intersect and diverge almost on a whim. And by the end, you're just left a sobbing mess, but really happy for these characters. So just like her, right? I would say this is a perfect companion piece for her.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's dialogue free as well.
Oh yeah, it's silent. It's just like Hundreds of Beavers.
Right. So, I would want my nearly 8-year-old nephew to watch it.
Oh yeah.
Because it teaches wonderful lessons about loss and grief and disappointment and friendship and all kinds of things without actually saying words. And Inside Out, I thought Inside Out 2 was absolutely blooming marvellous. I don't mind how much
Yeah, true.
it...
We haven't. That was a film that almost appeared on my
Right,
list.
and I loved it, and I don't mind that it tells you all the things you need to know, but I love the fact that Robot Dreams doesn't need to tell you anything. It shows, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Right, and then Sarah, you brought up Rebel Ridge. That movie rules!
Is this your number one?
No, it almost appeared on my list.
Yeah.
Almost. Was kind of bumped off by Wild Robot. But man, if you haven't seen Rebel Ridge, watch it. Everyone has a Netflix subscription or knows someone who has a Netflix subscription.
Just get online and watch it.
What a movie. I think after I watched it...
And the lead is extraordinary.
That guy is going places.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember watching it and then messaging you guys going, now that was a movie.
Absolutely.
So my film of the year is another one where I watched and then immediately texted you guys saying, I think this is my film of the year. Readers, listeners, watchers, you will have known that oftentimes I try and stick to Chinese movies in here because I find them fascinating. Some of them are very good. Some of them are very didactic, which is the Chinese way of doing things, unfortunately. And this movie blew my freaking socks off. It is called Successor. I remember you talking about this, 2024, it is the highest grossing film in China this year. And this is like including international releases as well. It outgrossed stuff like Deadpool and Wolverine and all the big boys. And which is fascinating because it is a very, very high concept movie.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to say spoilers are necessary to really get into what this movie is about. I highly recommend it. It is a comedy, a high concept comedy.
Yes.
And if you want to get in there fresh, do not listen to the following description.
Okay.
So you have been warned.
Nice.
Here we go. So, Successor, which is directed by Yang Fei, starring Shen Ten and Ma Li, who were... Do you guys remember I brought up Moon Man a couple of years ago? Like, they're the main characters, or main actors in that. I love them together. They're a good comedy duo. It is a high concept comedy that I can best describe as Parasite meets The Truman Show.
Oh.
Okay. So it is a comedy about helicopter parenting where, you guys know the old adage, it takes a village to raise a child?
Yeah.
Well, what if everyone in the village was employed by the dad? So basically, the high concept part comes from the fact that the richest, corporate dude in China, he's trying to raise his son to be his successor. His oldest son is a failure. His young son is highly pliable. And he's like, oh gosh, I pulled myself up from my own bootstraps. I started life in poverty. I learnt these life lessons along the way. And now I'm just giving these guys, a silver spoon on a platter. Yeah. Not anymore. So he and his wife, so Shen Ten and Ma Li, they construct a Truman Show-esque reality around this poor child to pretend to live in poverty in order to hone him to become the ultimate successor. And he doesn't know that his parents are super rich. They gather scraps of plastic off the street to sell at a scrap yard. He's mocked by kids at school for wearing just tattered uniform. And it's kind of like that Truman Show-esque thing, but also...
But not televised.
It's not televised,
Okay. But the construct is
yes,
such.
so they have a command center where they're controlling everything. It's underneath their hovel of house.
Right.
And then, of course, they have the whole team who are there to educate the kid. And they do so... as educators, I think you guys would really appreciate this.
Yeah.
They do so in the most holistic way possible. And so as the kid is going to school, he's walking to school... This American tourist bumps into him just out of the blue and is like, hey there, little kid, can you tell me the way to the train station? And just practicing English with him. These these old guys playing chess, I'm just on the street, are talking to him about logic.
It reminds me of that Nathan For You show. What was that one called? The Rehearsal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and they
Oh
had
my gosh.
different people bumping in to
Add
teach
the rehearsal to this as well.
Yeah.
There's so much of Nathan For You here as well.
Yeah.
Except obviously fictionalized. And it's just this wonderful conceit of what if you had helicopter parenting gone way too far.
I love that. I'm keen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so much fun. And by the end of it, you are, at the same time, really, really wanting this mum and dad to succeed because they put in so much love and care and money.
And they're doing it in a benevolent way.
Yes,
Yeah.
but also, on the other hand, they are monsters.
Don't-
They've been gaslighting this kid.
Don't tell us what happens.
I shall not.
No.
But it's just this fantastic tension. And I think it resolves in a really fun way.
Great
I
premise.
love this movie.
Great
So
premise.
success.
What's it on?
I watched it at the movies.
Okay.
Gosh, it must
to
be
find it.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it was really, really big back around June, July.
Yeah. Awesome.
Nice. Sarah, bring us on home. What's your films of the year?
Well, kia ora everyone.
Kia ora.
My third film of the year. I'm surprised at this, but then when I reread my review, I went, yeah, and it makes me want to see it again. And if I want to see something again, then I must have quite liked. Either I really liked it, or I write an amazing review, because it makes me want to see it. The film is directed by Ava DuVernay,
Oh.
and the film is Origin. And honestly, no, I mustn't start with, I don't even know why it was so good. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so Origin absolutely blew my socks off, to use William's phrase. So it's part biopic, part love story, but as I wrote in my review, it's mostly a socio-political essay, and I think probably on some sort of intellectual level I found this absolutely fascinating. So it is a dramatization of a real lady. So an African-American author named Isabel Wilkerson, and she is played by the beautiful Ingenue Ellis Taylor, who was the wife in King Richard, that Will Smith film, and extraordinary actress. So she plays this academic, author and academic, Isabel Wilkerson, who frames a different sort of, and I put here, fascinating and courageous hypothesis that argues for the reframing of critical race theory in America. So this black woman is saying, basically, we're looking at racism all wrong. It's not racism that is happening, and she's an anthropologist and goes around the world and looks at the way, for example, the Nazis didn't discriminate against people on race per se. And in India, the caste system is not about race per se, but that she argues that actually there are caste systems at play, that social stratification is the thing that oppresses people historically and continues to do so now. And obviously she's also looking at this primarily in America and whatnot. Now this might all sound incredibly dry. I don't know. It depends what you're really into. This is the director, obviously, of When They See Us and Selma. And I thought Selma was fine. It was worthy and all that, But this film is long. It's like 2.5 hours. It's incredibly beautifully shot, incredibly well acted by this wonderful Ingenue Ellis Taylor, and John Bernthal as her white American husband.
Is he Walking Dead? And yeah.
And he's in The Bear.
And The Bear, right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
He's
right.
the
It's
bear,
Mikey.
yeah.
That's right. He's Mikey in The Bear. But he's not Mikey in this. He's a lovely, devoted husband. So, but I think the bits that really got me are scenes where the character goes to Delhi in India, for example, and we actually go to Delhi, and we see scenes that are shot pretty much in a documentary fashion. You know that what's happening here is real people doing real stuff. That speaks to really the horrors of a caste system that says you were born in this particular caste and your job in life will be, and this is a real thing, these people are called the untouchables, and they are lowered into sewers every day to clean those sewers by hand. And that is your job, and that is your life. And there is no getting out of that. So there's no upward mobility or marrying out of it, or do you know what I mean? And to me, that is unimaginable that there would be something that is so inescapable. Anyway, I just found it absolutely enthralling. It's an incredible film. Photographically, the performances are extraordinary, the script and everything, blah, 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 blah. And it felt incredibly illuminating and really stimulating. And I will watch a lot of stuff, and I'll watch a lot of stuff that doesn't really stimulate me intellectually at all. But this really provoked a different way of thinking about the world, So anyway, I thought it was amazing.
Awesome.
So that's Origin. I don't know. I find that a hard one to sort of sell, other than to say I gave it 5 stars and that's what that is. Less hard to sell, if you're into a little bit of a satirical comedy, is my number 2 film. My number 2 film I saw literally the beginning of the year, because I saw it when we were on holiday, on vacay in America. American Fiction.
This was almost on my list. American Fiction.
American Fiction.
Brilliant.
Didn't you bring this up last year as well? You loved it.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Did I put it in my list?
No, I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
I mean, it technically came out this year.
Because I remember thinking about it and watching it and thinking, Sarah recommended this.
Yeah, I did. I did recommend it, but I think I can't have seen it
when
we did our podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. And I saw it in America, and we would have done the podcast before then. So American Fiction, for those who don't know, where have you been, is Jeffrey Wright, wonderful actor Jeffrey Wright, who's been in everything for decades and decades, finally getting all the awards buzz and attention that he always deserved, really, for a whole career. So Jeffrey Wright plays a rather dry-witted, droll, academic/writer called Thelonious, and his nickname is Monk, for obvious reasons. And he's an African American author whose publisher says, look, your book sales aren't doing that great. What we need from you is a black book. And he says, what are you talking about? I'm black, I write, my books are black books. And they're like, no, what we need is something like, and there's this woman, she's an African-American woman, she's writing novels, and she's writing them in the patois of like the gangster neighborhoods and like the street, and the market is lapping these books up. And so Monk is outraged when his publishers say, what we need is something more like that. And he says, but that's fake. It's not real to me. It's not real to her. I can't. And they're like, well, that's what we want. So he adopts a pseudonym, and then he publishes, tongue firmly in cheek, he publishes this supposedly autobiographical novel as if he is a recently released felon, and he writes it all in the, as I say, the patois of like street
He sort of writes it on
everything.
a drunken night, doesn't he? Sort of angry at the world, almost
He's
as a joke.
furious about it.
Yeah.
And so he writes this book, submits the manuscript, the book goes absolutely stratospheric, and he becomes a major hero, but nobody knows that that's him except his agent, because he's done it under a pseudonym. So he's doubly appalled that he's bought into, that he was doing it just to make a point, and that this terribly, and there, the majority of the readership are white virtue signaling kind of, middle class Americans,
That's
all
amazing.
just going, I think it's incredible.
I watched that on the plane from Auckland to New York, and my dad was watching it next to me, and he was sort of half an hour behind. So I couldn't help but be like, the whole time I was watching it, I was watching the scene that I'd watched, a few minutes before.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. We both had a great time. And one thing he said to me, and this is potentially a spoiler, but I think it's not, I mean, you've kind of just described the whole film, really. Like, but you're fine. It's not really what the movie's about.
Yeah.
The premise is sort of the story, but it's what happens around it. And he said to me, it's funny that the kind of the type of story he wanted to be known for is what the movie is.
Yeah.
Like, it's just about his life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And about the characters in his
and
life.
the movie is very, very direct about that.
Yeah.
It has many scenes which are completely removed from the actual story of the publication.
Absolutely.
Which is generally speaking, about exactly what he wants.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It's very clever. And the thing I love about it is Cord Jefferson, who is the bloke who wrote the film and also directed it. It was his directorial debut. And he was nominated for Best Picture and he won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay. I mean, it's just marvellous, you know, for like Ben and Matt when they won for Good Will Hunting, and Tarantino to win a screenplay Oscar. For your first film is absolutely marvellous. I'm not saying Tarantino.
Jeffrey Wright is just so perfectly cast
He's
as well.
brilliant. I had never seen him so brilliant. He's done a lot of terrific roles, and he was Basquiat. I never say that name right. The artist. Do you know how to say Basquiat? Or maybe it's Basquiat.
I don't know.
But he's done great roles. But this, oh my gosh, really marvellous. So that was American Fiction. But my number one film, and do you know what? I almost can't even talk about it, write about it, or think about it, was All of Us Strangers. All of Us Strangers? Yeah, All of Us Strangers. My goodness. And again, I saw it really early on in the year. It had so much buzz. It had so much buzz for both Andrew Scott. Andrew Scott, who went on to play Ripley. Actually, Ripley was not my television of the year. No, we're all good, as you were. But Andrew Scott, who then went on to play Ripley this year, and the wonderful Paul Mescal, who went on to do that little indie feature with Ridley Scott about the people fighting in the Coliseum.
Yeah, Thelma and Louise too.
Glad to hear I hear.
Glad to
Honestly.
As well as the wonderful Claire Foy and Jamie Bell.
Oh, gorgeous. So what an exquisite film of grappling with having the conversations you wish you could have had with the people that you've loved and lost. An exquisite film about loneliness, about love. Just a really amazing film, incredibly cleverly, beautifully told. Like I feel as though the scenes with with Andrew Scott's character's parents were just pitch perfect in their writing and their tone. And it was just a really incredible film.
I saw that in Sydney at the start of the year, and I everyone was crying. There was a mostly gay male audience, to be honest, and a lot of crying. I almost put this film on my biggest disappointments list, but I didn't because I can't talk about that without ruining the end of the film. But I don't disagree with you, Sarah, and it's not from any sort of representation perspective. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I'll talk about it maybe after the podcast.
Sure.
It's a storytelling choice that I just was a little bit. I was like, I was in it until this.
No, look, I totally feel you.
Do you know what I might be alluding to?
I mean, I know.
It's the end of the film.
I know that it's the sort of thing that I could have gone either way on, and I clearly went the right way, or went the way of I will accept this.
I think the film is playing with two different narratives in that central character, and I was just disappointed that the end of one of those narratives was where it was.
And yet it was consistent to the character,
if
you know what I mean, because it was sort of an extension of something that was already going on for him. But,
I suppose. But
the performances were outstanding, and give me anybody that I can... lose. I know we all feel this way. Lose myself in the truth of what they're doing, and then you'll get away with anything.
Another brilliant work from that director. I mean, he did The Weekend.
Andrew Haigh. That's
Andrew
right.
Haigh, yeah.
So he broke ground with Weekend because back in the day, like I don't remember how long ago that was, 12, 15 years ago. Back in the day, we weren't used to seeing. Or when I say ordinary gay men fall in love on screen, I mean it wasn't The Birdcage, or kind of it wasn't a flamboyant sort of, wasn't Priscilla Queen of the Desert or whatever.
Or it wasn't like a skewering of tropes with Brokeback Mountain. It's different.
Exactly. It was just two blokes who meet in a club and spend a weekend together, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And then he did 45 Years, which wasn't gay at all, and it was Tom Courtenay and Charlotte Rampling playing an old couple who have been together for 45 years, hence the name, who uncover a secret and there's a slight rupture in their relationship. But I mean, my goodness, that man knows how to write and direct relationship dramas.
Nice. Great. Well, I mean, there's no consensus in our list
No,
except
there
for
is.
one film.
Which is the biggest disappointment.
Yeah.
No, well, there's that. But I mean, there was a film that snuck in twice, and I guess Rule of Threes detects. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word. Directs. Anyways, the movie is Rebel Ridge. Rebel Ridge snuck in from both of you. I've yet to see it, but I mean that's the only film that has any consensus.
I mean, it's a good time.
You've
Not gonna
yet to
lie.
see it.
I've
Oh
yet to
my
see
god,
it.
you'll have such a
Yeah.
good time with it.
Yeah, I don't have Netflix, but I am going home to my parents who have
Hey.
Netflix.
It's
so
very
there we are.
it's very rewatchable as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Fun for the whole family. Honestly, it's not ultra violent and it's
Okay.
thrilling.
And that's
and-
actually what's so clever
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Nice.
But my goodness, it is gut. When I say not
Pulse
gut,
pounding.
it's not gut churning. It is so anxiety making.
Well,
But
last
don't let
year,
that put you off.
last year we watched. Maybe it's not. Maybe the year before. What's the wonderful film that's all one shot with the brothers and starts with A on Netflix?
Athena.
Artena. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a great
It's not
experience.
all one shot, but there are lots of one shot
Yeah,
bits.
right.
You're quite right. That's extraordinary.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoy our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and where all great podcasts can be found. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode, as well as give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, which will be our first episode of 2025.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. And until then,
No mai.